that we are recording this session so that we can make the recording available after the fact for folks. If you could please keep your sound off and your videos off, that will help us with the bandwidth for the presentation. I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce to you our guest speaker for today. His name is Vic Kapoor, and he's generously agreed to come talk about his new book today. Just hang on, I just got a few things I need to pull up. Okay, so Vic is a professional coach for high potential young professionals and president of Extra M Coaching, which has a client list spanning 6 continents. He is the author of the Amazon #1 bestseller, First Serve Yourself, and works as a conflict resolution expert in the US federal government. Vic was previous at the United Nations, where he built a peer conflict coaching program in over 40 countries during the pandemic. He has a law degree from Georgetown and a bachelor's from UCLA. Just a few housekeeping matters. We will run from about noon to 12:30. And we are, as I mentioned earlier, if some of you weren't here, recording this session. It is closed captioning enabled, so you should be able to see a banner at the top of your screen to enable closed captioning. Is that what you desire? You may engage with us via the chat function. If you're unfamiliar with chat still at this stage in hybrid working, it is in your dashboard at the bottom. If you hover over the bottom of your screen, the chat function will pop up and you can open that screen. Vic may run some polls, and he is happy to answer questions as we go through the presentation. So I will turn this over to you, Vic. Welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Appreciate you all being here. And we're going to be talking today about first serve yourself. You know, how can you first serve yourself? What is that all about? And what does self-coaching really mean, right? So we're going to dive right into that. And I'm very excited to share some of my self-coaching toolkit with you. In this conversation, you're going to walk away with just some new nuggets that you can apply right away. Let's just start with a little bit of mindfulness if we can. Now, this doesn't work for everybody, so I'll give you 2 options, and I'll shut my video off too, just so I can participate fully in here. So I'll ask you to plant your feet, and this is all caveated with that it's safe for you to do so, right? But planting your feet, soft gaze, maybe close your eyes if it's convenient for you, and just notice the breathing in and out of your nose. The breath, you know, in and out of your nose, noticing that breathing. You don't have to modulate it at all, just kind of notice it the way it is. Nothing else to do, nowhere else to be, just noticing that breathing in and out of your nose. If you're stuffy, you can use your mouth. If you're feeling distracted, you can, instead of breathing, you can think of a positive future. You can daydream a little bit if you like. And we're just going to do this for 2 minutes. Just noticing that breath or focusing on a positive future. And if other thoughts come in, if you get distracted, just come right back to the breathing or your creative imagination. Just noticing that breathing in and out of your nose, or visualizing that positive future. Just noticing the breath in and out of your nose, or imagining that positive future. And if you get distracted, don't worry. Just come right back to what you were doing. And one last breath in and out. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Come back to us here. So easy enough, believe it or not, that can have strong impact on your nervous system response. If you're feeling triggered, it can help you get grounded. It can release oxytocin and dopamine, create some empathy. Lots of benefits to a quick minute of silence. And the military uses this tactical breathing. We've seen a lot of benefits come out of various resources now, like Altered Traits, which is a great book on the value of meditation. I always like to give participants this gem because, for instance, Tim Ferriss, when he was writing Tools of Titans, it's a book that he put together based on some of the wisdom from some leaders, performance experts out there. He found that about 60% of them had some kind of mindfulness practice. And that's not coincidence, right? There's a lot of benefits that come out of this for your competitive advantage and for your calmness. So I'd like to give that to everybody. I'm sure you have some kind of practice already, perhaps, and this is just to augment that. Okay, so this is a very tools-based, paradigm-based conversation that we're having. I know it's pretty short. I'll invite you to just try this on for size. What I'll ask you to do is to pick a conflict or challenge that you have going on right now. It could be big or small. Let's try to avoid the really big ones and the really small ones, maybe something more average in terms of intensity. So take a moment now, think of a conflict or challenge you're facing. Hopefully you've got one. And now we want to think about what mindset you have right now when it comes to this challenge. And there's a couple of different frameworks I'm using here. You might have others, but there's the Arbinger Institute, inward and outward mindset, right? The outward mindset meaning you're all about other people, you're all about service. The inward mindset being it's all about you, it's all about treating people like objects, not like people, right? Scarcity is about there not being enough for all of us. There's not enough. We must fight for what we have. We must hold on to what we have, right? And we might come from a place of fear where we're afraid that there might not be enough to go around. Abundance or sufficiency, as somebody else has called it, right, is having more than enough. And believing that there's enough to go around, we can enlarge the pie for mutual gain, right? So thinking about what mindset might you have in the situation. Is it fixed where you cannot grow anymore? Certain characteristics are stuck. Certain people are stuck. They're just the way they are. Or is it a growth mindset, right? Where things can change, you can grow, people can adapt and adjust. Is it a victim mindset where things are happening to you? Or is it a player mindset? This is Ed Kaufman. He was the head of coaching at Google, and I think LinkedIn. Came up with this idea of the player mindset. Are you the player in the game, right? Are you doing things or are things being done to you? And so again, what is your mindset there? And which one comes to mind for you, right? Like when you're thinking of these mindsets, which one's really relevant for you? And grab onto that right now. Maybe you have a different mindset in mind, and that's fine too. Now, if you don't like it, here's an invitation for you to flip it, okay? And this comes from Hira Ali. She's a Pakistani coach. She's also a psychologist, trained psychologist, and she put some research together and realized that if you do a brain flip, you can legitimately flip a mindset, change your attitude very quickly. So if say you're thinking I'm in a inward mindset, I'm thinking about myself, I'm not looking out for other people. I might say 3, 2, 1, flip. I'm going to be outward. I'm going to think about other people. I'm going to, commit to that. I'm going to have a service mindset. What would my conflict or challenge look like if I took that on, right? So I invite you to try it now, to think of that mindset you might have. Maybe you have a negative mindset of these here, and just, you might use this with people you work with as well. You might just close your eyes and say 3, 2, 1, flip. And so you can catch yourself in moments. Maybe you're afraid, maybe you're feeling scarcity, maybe you're feeling selfish or compassion fatigue, and you can flip it on the spot just by noticing it. Affect labeling, so labeling the mindset, creating an intention to flip it, going through the numbers 3, 2, 1 flip that triggers the prefrontal cortex. So you're creating some structure and some resources around your desire, stated desire to flip your mindset there. So that's one example of self-coaching. Of all the people I spoke to and the research I looked at, and I applied a lot of this in my own life and with a number of my clients as well. That was one example that popped up as something really valuable, the brain flip. But the idea of self-coaching is it's self-directed. You do it on your own terms, in your own way, at your own time. And you're pulling on the research that's out there in cognitive behavioral science, social economics, coaching psychology, all these kinds of things. And then you're also looking at tools like a journal, a mirror, a voice recorder, video recorder. Maybe you can use your phone if you really have to. So we're scaffolding the research, and we're applying the research using day-to-day tools that you have at your disposal. And then you can use tech as well. I can give you some examples of how I use the gig economy and tech to augment my own journey as well. Okay, so this matters because most people don't realize what coaching is, right? Most Fortune 500 CEOs have a coach. Most people don't really know what a coach is. Gallup wrote a book, It's the Manager. It says most organizations will be made or broken on the value of its managers, middle managers. And by the way, the best middle managers are going to be the best coaches. But if people don't really understand what coaching is, how do they be good coaches? So self-coaching is a way to start to pick up that curiosity, that humble inquiry, that, not having advice all the time, really asking questions and opening up space so people can have better understanding for themselves. If you work on that with yourself, you'll see the value of it and then be able to apply it to the people around you. And that's the vision. Most people are really missing the boat on this. There's too much advice being given out as coaching, too many people masquerading as consultants, right? So the challenge is when I give you the answer, you're not building the neural network to be able to solve that problem by yourself next time. And by the way, if I'm trying to jump in and give you advice, odds are I'm trying to solve the wrong problem. All right, so we want to really dig in. What is the actual problem, and what is the real issue there, right? And then how can we go about addressing it? So I invite you to think of, now for this one, it's similar to the brain flip. It's called From the Basement to the Balcony. And it's a step-by-step process to reduce triggering. If you're feeling very upset about something, it's a way to be able to engage somebody calmly. Say you're about to get on stage and you're feeling very nervous and you want to regain some equilibrium, or there's a lot of tension in the room and you want to de-escalate it a little bit. I see some of my ombuds buddies on here, so I know they are very familiar with the amygdala hijack, but really we're trying to reset the limbic system. We're trying to bring you back from freeze or from fight flight. And so what you do is it's a combination of things. One is you want to activate your vagus nerve by breathing out a little bit longer than you breathe in. So you want to breathe in a little bit and you want to exhale a little bit longer. And just breathe in a little bit and exhale longer, maybe out of your mouth. That's helping to reset the limbic system. And as you're doing that, if you can say, look, I'm in the basement right now, I'm triggered, I'm shut down. Lenny Marcus at Harvard came up with this idea of the basement, right? If you can label it as the basement, and if you can try to get to the balcony, get above yourself, look down upon the situation with that third party view, you'll be able to then start to shift again the brain chemistry. So if you're feeling triggered, to breathe out a little bit longer than you breathe in, to notice that you're in the basement, to make an intentional shift that you want to be on the balcony, and then to imagine yourself above you, looking down at yourself in the situation. And that balcony part comes from Bill Urey, who's a conflict resolution expert and peacemaker and professor at Harvard as well. And so both of those, the Lenny Marcus basement and the Bill Urey balcony, if you use them together and you add in the breathing, you're going to have a really nice structure there to quickly bounce back from any moment of being triggered. And I just invite you to try it out. Again, all the things I'm offering you, they're just menu options. They work for a lot of people. They're based in research, but they don't have to work for you. And it's really supposed to be an individualized inquiry. Go out and look for things that are better suited for you if these aren't working, right? But those are just a couple that I wanted to offer for you. And I'm not going to spend a long time on this, but I wanted to let you know just a little bit about the journal, what I found in my research. I found a couple of things that were really easy to do that were quite effective. And one of those is gratitude journaling. If you write down 3 good things you've done today, 3 good things that happened to you today, and what had to happen for each of those to occur, doing that is going to improve your happiness. And it's going to improve your happiness for even months after you stop doing it, if you do it for 14 days. So that's a huge hack that comes out of positive psychology that you can start doing right away. 3 good things and what had to happen for each of those to occur. For example, one good thing that happened today is I'm here with you talking about this, and there's so much that had to go into that. Kirsty had to invite, and there had to be a book, and there had to be content to share with you. So much gratitude around that for me. And you'll notice that as you write about it, that second part, what had to happen, is actually much more exciting to the nervous system than is the first part. So we want to do that. And we want to write it down, because when you write things down, it goes to the hippocampus in your brain, and then it's stored as long-term memory. So there's some real value in writing things out. Yeah. So we got the gratitude journaling. You can also think about morning pages and evening pages, ways to unload things just as you wake up or just before you go to sleep, even for a minute or two, will tend to help you just decompress and filter through some of the noise that you might have. Pen and paper journaling is a process that's really effective. It takes 3 days, takes 10 to 15 minutes every day. And it's really helpful if you're trying to work through a difficult situation, a setback, a trauma. We did it quite extensively at the UN when I was working with people who had lost loved ones after the pandemic and right after the pandemic. As you can imagine, different countries, it was quite difficult. So what you do is you start writing, and you don't stop writing for 10 to 15 minutes, whatever you allocate in the beginning. You have a timer, and you're writing about things, something that is deeply emotional, an emotional wound, something difficult, and you're just writing about it from any vantage point, any context that you want. And you're trying to just, for the first day, just write out whatever you want. And for days 2 and 3, you start to think about an arc, the beginning, the denouement, the climax, all the different parts of the story for you. Where are you now? And what's next? That kind of thing. It's very cathartic. So I'll give that to you as, again, another resource you can pull on. There's been a tremendous amount of research on expressive journaling, pen and paper journaling. So I want to share that with you. And then in terms of a mirror, mirrors are very powerful because, as you may know, there's some new research about mirror neurons. So there are neurons on my face, right? And in my brain that are kind of, they're channeling the electrical impulses according to what your face looks like as well. So I can read your face because my face will contort in a micro way to mimic your face. So that makes it very difficult, for instance, to play poker with somebody who's had Botox injections. It's hard to read them. It's hard for them to read you. It makes the game much more messy, right? The benefit for our purposes, as we're thinking of self-coaching, you're thinking of presenting, maybe you're thinking of persuading somebody, or you're having to deliver some bad news. Maybe you're trying to see how confident you are about something. Maybe it's a little bit of expressing self-love, some self-compassion if you've had a tough time. All of these things can be very powerful, right? So we want to notice the mirror neurons. We want to notice the power we have when we look into a mirror. We start to create a synchronicity with what we are saying and what we look like. So if you have to deliver bad news, you may not deliver it very well unless you practice. So you might put yourself in front of a mirror, you might record yourself, right? And you might think through how that might help you. And there's some great research out of Columbia Barnard on mirror meditation. I did this mirror meditation challenge. I recommend everyone try it if you want. There's also other mirror workbooks out there where you're essentially spending 2 weeks every day in front of a mirror for 10 minutes, just staring at yourself in front of the mirror, noticing what comes up for you. It's a meditation, but are there some negative thoughts coming up? Are there some worries, challenges? And how do you address those, right? So I mentioned the practicing key conversations is another great use of the mirror. And then Steve Jobs would every day ask himself these questions. He would say, is this the best? Do I want to be doing this today? I think was the question. Do I want to be doing this today? And so, he asked himself that question almost to the day he died. And it's like, is this what I want to be doing today? And so you can use that kind of self-conversation to drive certain outcomes, to help you do a gut check on your feelings, and to again, check how confident you might be about something. So that's an underutilized but powerful resource that we have everywhere, right? And another one is a voice recorder. You could use a video recorder. As I said, you could use your phone as well. And this is really helpful when you're on the move, you're trying to check on your confidence perhaps, or you're trying to capture a certain emotion. Maybe you want to digest key learnings over time. And you may just explore, is this better than a journal for you? What's more effective? Maybe you want to do something in tandem with it. But I find it to be extremely effective, especially for people who are on the move quite a bit, and you run the risk of not quite remembering something later. So this is a good way to capture it in the moment. And I'm just want to check in on the chat. Thank you for that. Thank you, Ashma, for that. And Otter.ai is really an effective tool as well for this as a transcription service. You can use that to transcribe anything that you record, and then you can bookmark it, search it. And then life logging is a new thing people are doing nowadays, where they're keeping track of everything that's going on. And this is a good way to kind of chronicle some of that, categorize it, and then you can come back to it later if you need to. So I talked about the voice recorder, talked about the journal, I talked about the mirror. Maybe something in there is interesting to you. I invite you to grab onto something and to try it out, because odds are you'll forget most of what I've said within 48 hours. That's how trainings usually work like this. But if you grab something and you hold on to it and you do more research on it and you apply it and see how it works, then it may be more cemented for you. And worst case scenario, you just eliminated a tool, and that's fine too. But odds are maybe something will stick for you. Okay, and as you're thinking of your own goals, I'd love to tell you just a little bit about the accountability and that kind of thing that I learned. When I was working with Marshall Goldsmith, who is a top coach, he works with the head of the World Bank, head of the Rockefeller Foundation. It's really heavy hitters, right? And he told me, look, we're all weak and in need of help. And the way it translates for him is that every day he has a personal assistant call him and ask him a number of questions. Did he spend time with his son-in-law? Did he do X number of push-ups? He has somebody checking on him every day. So I spoke to Marshall about this and I said, man, you've done this for 30 years. How much is this costing you? And he was very offhandedly, just kind of dismissive about it and said, look, it's not about the money, it's about the time. Look how much time I've spent on this and how much value it's had for me. And a long story short, I have my own personal assistant call me every day. I learned very quickly that if you create a test for yourself, you start to fail that test every day, you're going to stop wanting to take the test. And so for my test, there's like 30 questions. How am I doing on vegetable intake? And, did I connect with my grandparents? And, all kinds of different pieces that are important to my values. Did I meditate 10 minutes? And we want to create these questions, and you can start by monitoring yourself and just seeing how they might work for you. But I invite you to really think about, getting that. Maybe you can use an app too. There's a great app called Daily Questions that you can pull on to augment some of this. And burning the boats is an important aspect of this, to have negative penalties, right? To have nested penalties. If you don't finish the project, then you have to run a mile in the evening. And if you don't run a mile today, then you have to run a mile every day for a week. And if you don't run a mile every day for this week, then you have to run 5 miles next week every day. And if you don't do that, then you've got to donate $100 to a political campaign that you don't like, right? And so with the nested punishments, you're creating so much structure that your brain doesn't want to renege. It doesn't want to miss out in the beginning. So you create that extra accountability, if you like. You can also include your friends and family, your mastermind, people that care about you, to create more structure around it. And sometimes you have to just throw the kitchen sink at it. If you're trying to for instance, go on a diet or quit smoking or something like that. They're really hard things, and you got to know when to quit on certain things as well. For instance, if you're building a business and it's not working out the way you want, noticing, and there's a great book by Seth Godin called The Dip, really looking at the structure of it and thinking, what's the value here, and how can I assess this objectively so that I don't sink more costs into this. Just checking on the chat very quickly. Yeah, thank you, Fabio. I will address that in a moment here. I'm happy to do that. I just want to say a word about unconscious bias. I'm mindful that we're right at the end of time here. If we had a longer time and we were together, it'd be a little easier to do an activity called Who Are Your People? And if we went around and we kind of asked you all, who are your people? Who do you resonate with? We would probably hear a number of similar things and different things, right? My people maybe care about causes. My people like certain foods. They care about certain sports or certain other impacts, right? And the key thing here is when our brain creates our people, when they create our in-group, we're also creating an out-group, people who are not like us. And the challenge is that if somebody's in my out-group and they get stabbed by a pencil, very lightly even, if they're in my out group, I'm not going to feel any pain in my brain. I'm not going to have a part of my brain get triggered by that. But if they're in my in group, my brain will light up as if I'm in pain. So really an invitation to all of you is to think of us as one people together. We're all our people. And if we can keep reminding ourselves, if we can keep having these, what Mary Rowe from my field of ombudsing talks about, micro affirmations, right? All of us are created equal. We're all in it together. You want to have a good meeting just like I do. You want to have a good day just like me. And we're all deserving of something valuable here. We're all valued and valuable, and things like that, right? So we want to remind ourselves that we're all together, and we don't want to create a lot of out groups because our brain will have trouble knowing the difference there, and it may react poorly in times as a result of that. So I wanted to offer that to you, and let me go to this question here. And yeah, so in terms of finding a good coach, I would just say nowadays people are very open to you having a quick chemistry call with them. So if you find a particular, maybe you have a certain demographic you're looking for, maybe certain geography, maybe you want somebody who solved the exact problem you're looking to solve. That's not always a requirement, but sometimes that's helpful. Some people, they come to me, for instance, if they're a young leader, they're high potential, they really want to level up in their career. And I'm very positive psychology oriented, and I've got a background in conflict management. So for some people, that just saying that, they're like, that's it, that's who I want. And for other people, that doesn't work, and that's perfectly fine. And I would say you can talk to a couple of coaches and get a chemistry call and see if it's a good fit for you before you sign up. And there are also some good apps. You can download apps on the store that you can link up with different coaches. There's one called Udify that is very effective, where you can tie in with therapists, coaches, mentors. So those are some options for you there, Fabio. Great. Well, I know we're right at the end of time here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vic, for coming to present to us. And if you have other questions, I'm going to stop the recording now. Vic has indicated he'd be happy to stay a few minutes to answer a question. There's a comment in the chat from Ken Skotacek about how to find coaches through the International Coaching Federation. But let me just stop that recording. And